biggest fights ever on MasterChef. What do you love most about MasterChef? Is it constructive criticism or finding out who the winner is? No matter what your choice is, we can all agree that seeing some of the most arrogant contestants and watching as the judges lose their temper is always a delight. It was Season 5, Episode 2 of MasterChef, and Elizabeth wasn't pleased with Leslie's attitude. The thing is, Leslie didn't really do anything wrong. Elizabeth just didn't like the way he was all over the place. Ramsay then added fuel to an already burning fire by asking Elizabeth who she would like to see go home. Elizabeth wasted no time in responding, and your guess is as good as mine.
Who's gonna screw up tonight? Why Leslie?
She pointed at Leslie, and her reason was that the man just talks but fails to complement his words with actions.
Because he likes to flap his jaws and not cook so much.
Leslie flared up by saying that she has never spoken to him before. He claimed that Elizabeth was being nosy. Now, what came next was something no one had expected. Elizabeth called Leslie out for living in Malibu. Yeah, she must have been a bit pained that he was living a privileged life as a stay-at-home dad.
No, I got where I got because I worked.
Oh, I know.
The fight went on till Ramsay intervened. Our famous chef wasn't ready to see his kitchen turn into a wrestling arena. Ramsay reminded Leslie that he was the oldest contestant in the season. The stay-at-home dad didn't allow pride to get into his head. He quickly apologized to Elizabeth for peace to reign. Seeing two contestants go against each other is a big deal, but it gets more dramatic when it involves a judge, and this is what we are about to see next. Does anyone remember the moment when Joe confronted Howard in the pasta elimination test? If you haven't seen Season 4, Episode 9, sit tight for this one. The contestants had to come up with a foreign dish for the Mystery Box Challenge, and Howard's dish didn't quite make the top entry. It was time for the elimination test, and Joe's mother, Lydia Bastianich, was present to give them a demonstration. Joe and his mother walked up to Howard's table while he was cooking. They were not satisfied with what they saw, and the party was just getting started. When Howard came forward with his agnolotti dish, Lydia commented that it was full of peppers and was not harmonious. Joe wasn't as nice as his mother with his own remarks.
Putting your spin on everything you make because you want to show us how cutesy and intelligent.
But Howard was very confident about his creation, and this made Joe more angry. Joe saw Howard's reaction as a form of arrogance and scolded him for it.
Well, that's going to get you a one-way ticket back to wherever you came from. And then you could show your friends and the 6 people who told you were good.
Joe is quick to remind Howard that he won't go far in the culinary world with such an attitude.
Worse than a cook who can't boil is a narcissist in full denial. Thank you for nothing. The whole thing with you is you have this very cavalier attitude. You don't know what you're cooking.
Howard and Lynn later had to be called up for elimination since they both had the worst agnolotti. Ramsay didn't try to be nice with his choice of words either. He pointed out that the young man failed because he ignored all of Lydia's counsels. Howard was kicked off the show, and during the interview, he acknowledged the fact that he had done his best. But was Howard really wrong? The young man only wanted to be ingenious. Joe was offended and felt protective of his mother, which is to be expected if the situation warrants it. The problem is that Howard wasn't being rude nor disrespectful to Lydia in the least. However, the fact still remains that Howard's dishes were considerably subpar and mediocre at best. He even tried to be sarcastic and made light of the situation by asking,
"You want 15 of the same dishes up here?"
This proves how much Howard isn't taking the competition seriously and is the main reason why Joe kept belittling him from day one. Meanwhile, when it comes to ratting the most arrogant, our next cook might go home with the award. At the beginning of Season 2, Christian Cullens gave the vibe of a humble guy who was open to learning more. However, things took a different turn as the show progressed. Christian was confident in an annoying way, and most of his fellow cooks testified to this. He was quick to shut down other people's idea during team challenges as if he was already a professional. All these attitudes he displayed were nothing compared to his record-breaking response to a judge's feedback. Christian's meal was up for scrutiny, and the judges were not too pleased with him. Well, the self-acclaimed cook didn't agree with the judge's view.
I think you're wrong. I don't think my dish is the worst dish here.
One thing that Christian later showed the world was the fact that he is a good cook who really needed to lose the attitude. But arrogance always changes the way people look at someone. It's an unattractive quality. Next up, these contestants are all grouped in twos by Courtney, who was the winner of the last challenge. Cutter was paired up with Dan, and their task was to prepare a surf and turf meal. Cutter and Dan made a disastrous team because they never seemed to agree on anything.
Still making two separate, you see what I'm saying? If you're doing vegetables and fish, I'm doing protein and meat. We're not marrying the dishes together.
In the pantry, Cutter argues that combining two different types of lean proteins won't work, but Dan diminishes his suggestion.
He is not listening to what I'm trying to tell him. These proteins don't go together. You need something to balance.
Just like someone building on a faulty foundation, the pair had to move on to the next stage of getting the ingredients. Before the two contestants could say jack, their pantry time was over. Cutter and Dan still did not have enough ingredients for their surf and turf dish. Cutter could no longer keep his anger and his pleasure in check.
I know I'm probably going into a pressure test because I have an idiot as a partner.
He started ranting about how Dan's stubbornness had brought them to this point. Gordon stepped out to taste the meal and labeled it as the worst so far in the competition.
That is possibly one of the worst dishes in this competition so far.
Joe didn't even attempt to be nice to them. He simply helped them to get the trash bin, and Cutter did the honors by throwing the meal into the trash. The pair had to redeem themselves by facing the pressure test with Christian and Francis B. Cutter missed elimination while Francis had to go home. In episode 19 of season 10, the judges brought in a special guest to guide the cooks on how to make homemade sausages. Judge Aaron went about his business inspiring the cooks, and his expertise had the contestants feeling like it's an easy task. Dorian was watching closely, and all her fears disappeared. It was time for the cooks to use the knowledge gained from Aaron to create their own sausage links in 60 minutes. With these links, they can make their dish. Everyone rushed into the pantry to select their ingredients. Nick compliments Dorian over how good her food was looking. Dorian thanked Nick and continued replicating her southern style in her dish. She prepared beans and tomatoes with a little garlic, and she's poaching her sausages in their own sauce. Aaron and Joe praised Dorian for her decisions. Dorian presents her dish: a wild boar, fennel, and apple sausage served with cannellini beans. The sausage and the bean stew came out looking great, and Gordon felt anyone who saw it would want to dive in. However, there was one judge who didn't agree: Joe. He pointed out that the garlic toast made the dish look cheap, but Gordon disagreed. Gordon calls Joe a fucking snob.
Yeah, I disagree. I think the toast cheapens the dish.
Like the garlic bread?
That's the kind of restaurants you guys go to.
Would you like a bread?
No, I don't want any garlic bread.
You're such a snob.
We must admit that it felt strange to see two judges argue about a meal. Joe changed his mind after tasting the dish. Now this is a drama we live for. MasterChef always comes as a complete package, with the judges giving their own attitudes and some of the contestants feeling like they know better. Is there any other big fight on MasterChef that you will like to see? Let us know in the comments below.